Black Hills, 1876. Secret plots ignite Custer's downfall at Little Bighorn. Full documentary. A disaster, a slaughter. George Crook's failed winter campaign didn't crush the Lakota, it united them. By June 1876, 7,000 native warriors waited as Custer, desperate for political fame, split his forces. His last words: "Hoorah, boys, we've got them." Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories. But first, what did Custer's own men whisper as the arrows rained down? In 1876, heavy snow and strong winds hit the grasslands, stinging the faces of soldiers as they huddled around their campfires, which struggled to stay lit in the storm. Colonel John Gibbon bends over a worn diary, his breath visible as he growls to a lieutenant. "Met a man who despises Indians more than snakes. Claims are good ones, only good deceased." His pencil scores the page, the lead scraping against the moist paper. "Frenzied canines, not combatants," he retorts in grimy Missouri saloons. Men pound fists on tables, cursing about red heathens. At Fort Abraham Lincoln, soldiers scuff the ground and chuckle, wagering on how quickly the primitives will flee. The Lakota, the Cheyenne, they're subhuman to these individuals, a pestilence to be eliminated. However, that disdain clouds their judgment, muffles the far-off beat of war drums, increasing in volume each night. The Black Hills rise ominous and uneven, pine branches cracking under accumulating snow. Gold deposits throb beneath the icy soil. Prospectors discovered them in August 1874. And the news spread through Washington, D.C. like wildfire. Ulysses S. Grant sits in a leather armchair, cigar firmly held in his teeth, the atmosphere heavy with smoke and perspiration. He strikes the table with his fist, the impact shaking a whiskey tumbler. "We're seizing it," he barks to his confidants, "and nobody is to know how." Pens glide across parchment, ink spreading as they outline the scheme. Invalidate the 1868 agreement, unleash the homesteaders, and let the Lakota suffer the consequences. January 3, 1876. Zachariah Chandler, Secretary of the Interior, pens a directive in his workspace. Gas lamps glowing to the reservations. By the 30 Honest, he murmurs to an assistant, lips twisting, "or we declare it war." Outside tempests rage, wind howling through the plains. Accumulating snowdrifts 6 feet high. Families are immobilized, horses struggle, infants succumb to the cold. Chandler is aware, rearranges his documents and anticipates. Philip Sheridan reclines in a rickety chair at Fort Laramie, boots resting on a container. The acrid smell of wet wool and stale tobacco permeating his discolored blue uniform. He's incinerated Georgia homesteads in 64 expanses of fire and wails, and now he'll inflict worse. Press them relentlessly, he commands his officers, voice sharp until they collapse and surrender. His subordinate acknowledges, jotting down the instruction: no patrols to intercept the encroaching settlers. By February, the hills are overrun. Individuals in fray attire wield axes, metal striking into tree trunks with heavy sounds. Picks dig into the soil, earth fragmenting gold particles tinting their fingers. Women haul containers, footwear submerging in the mire. The Lakota observe from elevated positions, composed, their exhalations visible in the frigid air, eyes monitoring each action. A warrior strengthens his hold on a spear, knuckles turning pale, then the deception surfaces. E.C. Watkins, a slender Indian Affairs agent, is hunched over in a cramped workspace, November 1875. His attire is worn, his fingers smudged with ink as he drafts a dispatch. Sitting Bull's factions marauding, slaying whites, creating mayhem. He composes the pen tip, scratching against the surface. He hesitates, smirks inwardly. This will suffice, and marks the document. No charred residences, no scalped victims, only fabrication, smooth as silk. The report reaches the newspapers on December 3. The New York Herald proclaims, "Hostile Sioux on the warpath. Farmers in Ohio grip rifles. Children in Boston speak of savage Native Americans." Historians now examine the records, perusing aged documents. Where's the substantiation? An expired bovine here, a vanished steed there. Nothing corroborates Watkins' narrative. He remains unfazed, merely ignites a cigar, and relaxes. Gold outweighs truth. Grant's apparatus operates. Chandler Sheridan. Watkins, a triad of components advancing toward domination. They presume it simple, antagonize the Lakota. Observe them, react violently, then advance with cavalry. Swords gleaming. Sheridan brags over liquor. They'll disperse by springtime, but the plains reveal a contrasting narrative. Hooves beat the snow, a consistent cadence. 2,000 Lakota, 1,000 Cheyenne. 500 Arapaho, numbers increasing constantly. Campfires illuminate the expanse. Smoke ascending into the overcast sky, the sound of igniting wood mingling. With hushed melodies, women mend animal skins. Men hone arrows, metal grating against rock. The U.S. anticipates uncivilized people who will retreat at the initial cannon discharge. Instead, they solidify into a barrier, structured, resolute. Chandler's ultimatum expires in the snow, January 31, concluding without capitulation. Sheridan's scouts return their expressions ashen, whispering excessive numbers. Far too many. Grant's chart rests on his desk. Borders bending, marked with tobacco stains. He outlines the hills with a digit. Initially grinning, now his expression hardens. The scheme is failing. Agitation doesn't fracture the tribes. It consolidates them. Prejudice impairs the army. Labeling them savages isn't merely animosity. It's a disastrous error in judgment. They fail to perceive the tactics. Within those encampments, the composure in those gazes. This isn't a minor undertaking any longer. It's a lit fuse emitting sparks. Custer spurs chime as he prepares to ride unmindful. Prepared to detonate the situation. At Fort Ellis in Montana, John Gibbon paces the wooden veranda. His footwear thudding on the timbers until they protest. He's the commanding officer here, a slender individual with a beard showing signs of age. And he's agitated, composing correspondence for the Army and Navy Journal. Between training exercises, pen scraping late into March 1876, he peers at the mountains, murmuring to a subordinate, "This territory belongs to them. Why are we sacrificing for it?" He's not lenient, his grasp on a firearm is unyielding. But he recognizes the corruption. Homesteaders partitioning hallowed land. Directives from Washington, reeking of duplicity. By May, he's advancing eastward from Montana. 400 soldiers following him. A component of the three-way assault, converging on the Lakota. His stomach churns. But he continues marching. Philip Sheridan remained seated, heavily at Army headquarters in Chicago. His chair protesting under his weight. April 1876, he's unshaven. His attire disheveled the atmosphere. Tainted with cigar butts and stale coffee. His workstation is a war zone, chart secured with pushpins. Dispatches piled haphazardly. He's the general of the Army 45. And his tone is piercing as he inclines forward. Snapping at his aide, "I need Terry advancing." Gibbon advancing, "Subdue them prior to summer." He's not strategizing now. He's applying pressure, monitoring troop movements. Insisting on haste, his Civil War tactics: incinerate, deprive, obliterate, dictate every command. He grins, driving a pin into the Little Bighorn vicinity. "They're finished," he whispers. He's mistaken. This is the battle they didn't anticipate. The resistance they didn't respect. The Little Bighorn is waiting, and the warriors are ready. Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories. The storm is just beginning. George Crook struggles through Wyoming mire. March 17, 1876. His operation a disaster. She's 200 miles distant. Traversing Fort Lincoln, viscera agitated. Firearms discharge fumes irritate the air. But the Cheyenne dissipate into the mountains. His offensive is unsuccessful. Equines hobble, suffering from frostbite. And supply vehicles are submerged to their axles in mud. He strikes a container near a diminishing fire. Growling to a scout, remains silent. Terry receives no information. He omits reporting the defeat, rendering Gibbon and Terry uninformed. That oversight has repercussions. 300 Cheyenne survivors proceed northward, uniting with Crazy Horse, augmenting the numbers at Little Bighorn. Crook's negligence doesn't merely miss a chance, it amasses a force. George Armstrong Custer parades across Fort Lincoln's training area. May 15, 1876, spurs clinking, golden hair flowing in the Dakota breeze. He's 36, the 7th Cavalry's acclaimed figure, and impatient. His lodging is strewn with investment documents, failed railway speculations that depleted his finances. He strides, striking a message against his leg, grinning at Libby, a single major victory. And I'll be New York's next sovereign. The election is approaching November 8, and he envisions a Senate position, perhaps greater if he can impress the media. He trains his 600 soldiers. Swords glistening, commanding will penetrate them effortlessly. His pencil scores the page, the lead scraping against the moist paper. Frenzied canines, not combatants. He retorts his gaze, sparkles, oblivious to the actual numbers. Sitting Bull prostrates himself in a parched ravine, near the Rosebud, June 5, 1876. Sediment coating his plaits. He's 45, hunk Papa Lakota, robust, lacerations marking his arms from the Sundance ritual. A blade glint 100 incisions. Blood flowing down his forearms, accumulating on the ground as to oath. Oh, observe, holding their breath, drums pulse profound and consistent. Membranes stretched beneath forceful strikes. He falters, perception clouding, troopers collapsing, equines wailing, then rises voice strained. Waken Tonka has delivered our adversaries to us. Acclamations burst forth a resounding wave. His settlement extends 3 miles alongside the Little Bighorn, 1,500 dwellings, smoke ascending thickly, horses neighing in enclosures. He traverses it unhurried, purposeful, conferring with Cheyenne representatives, delineating combat strategies with a twig. We assault collectively, he instructs a messenger. Gaze resolute, he's not a visionary. He enumerates warriors, 2,500 in total. Monitors army dust plumes. Consolidates Lakota, Cheyenne, Arapaho into a unified weapon. His dwelling serves as a command center. Voices hushed, strategies precise. Crazy Horse patrols the settlement's perimeter. Reynolds relaxed his painted pony, stirring up dust. In his mid-30s, Oglala Lakota, he's lean, sharp, featured, a worn garment draped loosely over his physique. June 17th, he's at Rosebud Creek. 700 combatants accompanying him. Attacking Crook's formation. Hooves vibrate, the earth projectiles whiz. His battle cry pierces the atmosphere. Hocka hey Crook. Soldiers disperse, firearms abandoned in the undergrowth. He maneuvers his steed composed, guiding riders with an uplifted hand. Back at the encampment, he genuflects by a blaze dividing a portion of venison, with a youngster murmuring, "Consume this winter is severe." A Cheyenne elder acknowledges afterward, aggressive like a predator, gentle like a sibling, his assessment is somber. 800 warriors under his authority, bows prepared, spears honed. He reconnoiters at daybreak, scrutinizing ridgelines, assessing Custer's dust cloud. They approach unwarily. He communicates to a subordinate voice, subdued. He's prepared, swift, silent, deadly. These figures don't merely converge, they collide forcefully. Gibbon is delayed. Sheridan is unyielding, Crook is careless. Custer is imprudent. Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse remain steadfast, they establish their defense. The army anticipates disorder, anticipating tribes to disintegrate. Conversely, They encounter a bludgeon, fashioned directed descending. The fuse sputters more intensely. Dust billows above the Little Bighorn terrain. In June 1876, generated by numerous hoofs impacting the arid soil, the U.S. Army devises a scheme to constrict the Lakota and Cheyenne, a three-way pincher intended to subjugate them completely. General Alfred Terry departs from Fort Lincoln on May 17, leading 600 soldiers westward over the Dakota Territory. His conveyances trundle axles, groaning beneath loads of ammunition and preserved meat, while turbid water splashes in flasks. He disseminates a chart in his quarters, illumination flickering, and stabs a digit at the Yellowstone River. Snarling to his assistant, "Gibbon joins us here, we encircle them." John Gibbon is already progressing, guiding 400 troops eastward from Fort Ellis in Montana. Footwear abrading against stony crevices. Along the Yellowstone's periphery, the river surges vigorously, overpowering the clinking of blades against canteens. George Crook is assigned to advance northward from Wyoming with 800 personnel, still recovering from his March blunder. The tactic depends on all three uniting concurrently, Terry from the east, Gibbon from the west, Crook from the south, compelling the tribes into an inescapable predicament. The landscape resists, however, a region of precipitous inclines, dense vegetation and waterways, incising profound channels through the grasslands. It's challenging territory, concealing sound and visibility. Intercommunication disintegrates rapidly. Terry's reconnaissance units venture forth, leather chafing, but their dispatches failed to arrive at Gibbon. Messengers disappear in the vastness, consumed by gales and expanse. Gibbon's forces advance laboriously, attire saturated with perspiration and grime, lacking any indication of Crook's whereabouts. Crook is recuperating from June 17, when 700 warriors under Crazy Horse overwhelmed his formation at Rosebud Creek, firearms discharged. Equin shrieked and his troopers retreated, abandoning 10 deceased on the ground. He crouches beside a chilled fire that night, whispering to his agent, "Terry doesn't require this knowledge. Maintain confidentiality, no dispatch. No emissary, merely quiet." Terry rubs his facial hair in exasperation, snapping to his officers, "Crook's vanished." Where's his unit? The division extends beyond mere organization. Terry, a Yale-trained attorney turned military leader, loads Crook's Wild West bravado. Crook, marked by Apache conflicts, views Terry as a headquarters-bound bureaucrat. Correspondence from 75 reveals it. Terry previously described Crook as imprudent. Crook retorted by designating Terry cowardly. Presently, they're not communicating, not collaborating, stranding 18 soldiers divided and disoriented. Crook's Rosebud failure remains concealed. Thus Terry and Gibbon proceed, approximating 800 adversaries, when the genuine number is threefold, that George Armstrong Custer separates from Terry's unit on June 22, spurs shimmering as he boards his chestnut steed. He's leading 600 members of the 7th Cavalry. And time is pressing. The November 8 election approaches. His finances are devastated by unsuccessful railway ventures, and he requires a triumph to elevate his status. He trims his fair locks in his shelter blades, rasping as strands descend to the earth. Then dons a pale deerskin coat, tassels oscillating as he exits. It's an ensemble, daring and flamboyant. Yearning for a depiction in Harper's Weekly, Terry arrives with Gatling weaponry. Mechanized destruction, 600 projectiles per minute, presenting them at the fort's perimeter. Custer scoffs, striking a container, and retorts, "Those contraptions, they'll impede me. I travel swiftly." He's relying on velocity, not artillery fixated on a rapid conquest. Scouts arrive that evening. Expressions grave, detailing dust clouds. Thousands in motion, not merely hundreds. Custer supports himself against a structure, grinning at Majorino, "They'll scatter upon sighting us." Primitives don't resist, no disputes. Collaborate, he commands. Scrutinizing each individual, he exercises his troops rigorously. June 23, who's impacting the training area, shouting, "We'll dissect them by midday." His arrogance is overwhelming. Admonitions are ignored, the fissures expand. Terry staff quarrel in his quarters. Captain Ware ambles, snapping Gibbons behind schedule. Crooks absent, what's the strategy? Terry strikes the surface with his hand, glassware vibrating, but he lacks a solution.